Your alarm goes off at 6:18 in the morning. You reach across the bed and silence it before the sound has fully entered the room. 9 minutes later, it rings again. Your hand moves automatically. By the third alarm, you are already late for a promise you made to yourself the night before. You stand in front of the bathroom mirror and recognize the expression. Not because you are tired, because the scene is familiar. You know the excuse you will use. You know how you will say tomorrow will be different. And you know how little authority that promise now carries. Later, someone asks how your plans are going. You smile, make a joke, and say you have been busy. The conversation moves on, but something in you does not. The part you rarely admit is that you are not only disappointed with what you have failed to achieve, you are beginning to dislike the person who keeps explaining the failure. You remember being more decisive and having standards that felt real. Now you postpone, distract yourself, seek approval, and call it a difficult season. Some seasons are difficult, and some goals should change, but sometimes the truth is simpler. The person your habits are producing is no longer aligned with the person you respect. That realization can become shame, or it can become intelligence. Shame says, "This is who you are." Intelligence says, "This is the version your current system keeps producing." That difference is the beginning of reconstruction. You do not need a dramatic new personality. You need new evidence. Because identity does not change through the speech you give yourself in the mirror. It changes through what you repeatedly do when the mirror is gone. Before this is over, you will have a practical 30-day method for building a stronger version of yourself without becoming fake, extreme, or cruel to the person you are now. The first principle is uncomfortable. Stop asking who you truly are, as though one perfect answer is hidden inside you. Ask instead, what kind of person are your current choices training you to become? Every promise kept, boundary abandoned, or decision delayed trains a pattern. Each time you choose immediate relief over a larger outcome, that pattern gains authority. Which costs you most right now? Breaking promises to yourself, shrinking around other people, or avoiding the work that could change your position? Keep your answer in mind. It identifies the first place where rebuilding must begin. Machiavelli was writing about political judgment, not personal therapy. In chapter 25 of The Prince, he examines fortune, changing circumstances, and the danger of remaining fixed in one method when the times demand another. His examples concern rulers, caution, and boldness. Applied carefully to modern life, the principle becomes a useful analogy. A strategy can help you survive one season and quietly imprison you in the next. Perhaps staying quiet once protected you from conflict. Pleasing everyone may have helped you feel accepted. Working only under pressure may have carried you through chaos. Avoiding commitment may have protected you from being seen failing. Those strategies may have served a purpose. But protection becomes limitation when the danger changes and the behavior does not. You behave as though the room is unsafe after the door is open. You wait for permission from people who no longer govern your life. You use caution where the moment requires decision, performance where it requires honesty, and explanation where it requires action. Building a new version of yourself, therefore, does not begin with hatred. It begins by asking what the old strategy was trying to accomplish. If you attack that part without understanding it, you may force it underground. You will perform confidence while needing approval, and perform discipline until pressure exposes the resentment beneath it. You will announce boundaries, then collapse when someone becomes disappointed. Real reconstruction is quieter. You examine the strategy, understand the reward it provided, and decide whether it is still qualified to govern your life. Notice the word govern. Your identity behaves less like a hidden essence and more like a small government. Your impulses make proposals. Your fears issue warnings. Your habits control the schedule. Your environment and relationships reward some choices and resist others. Your judgment is supposed to decide which voice receives authority. When judgment is weak, the loudest impulse governs. When judgment is absent, convenience governs. When judgment is borrowed, other people govern. You can say you want a new life, while allowing the same old cabinet to make every decision. That is why motivation disappears so quickly. You changed the speech, but not the chain of command. You called yourself disciplined, but the phone still had the first vote every morning. You called yourself confident, but another person's expression still decided whether you spoke. You called yourself focused, but every notification could interrupt the work. The new version of you must be built as a transfer of authority. Not authority over other people. Authority over what receives your obedience. Begin with reconnaissance. For 3 days, do not describe yourself with vague words such as lazy, weak, lost, or broken. Those words feel powerful because they are total. They are also strategically useless. Gather facts instead. What do you repeatedly postpone? What do you reach for when discomfort appears? Which private promises are easiest to break? Around whom do you become less honest? What do the first and last hours of your day reveal? What matters in your words but rarely appears on your calendar? This is not humiliation, it is intelligence. But accuracy must include more than failure. Record where the stronger pattern already appears. Perhaps you remain calm in emergencies, learn quickly once curiosity replaces fear, or work with discipline after the first 10 minutes. Perhaps you speak clearly when prepared, or recover faster than you did a year ago. The new version is rarely built from nothing. It is assembled from useful strengths that already exist but appear too inconsistently to become identity. You are not creating a fantasy personality. You are removing the conditions that bury your better judgment and making its appearance less accidental. This is where many attempts at reinvention fail. People choose an image instead of a principle. They imagine the posture, success, and moment everyone notices. But an image cannot guide a private decision. A principle can. The image says, I want to look disciplined. The principle says, I keep the first promise of the day. The image asks for respect. The principle refuses to trade clarity for approval. The image wants fearlessness. The principle allows fear to advise, but never to make the final decision. The image needs an audience. The principle works in an empty room. Choose one governing principle for the version you are building. Only one at first. It must be clear enough to decide behavior. I will be better is not a principle. I finish one important task before seeking distraction can decide a morning. I respect myself is too broad. I do not give an immediate yes when I need time to decide, can protect a real boundary. I become confident is an outcome. I prepare, speak once, and let my words stand, is a practice. The strength of a principle is not how impressive it sounds. It is how many confused moments it can simplify. But a principle without proof becomes another promise. So choose one daily act that serves as evidence. Make it small enough to survive a difficult day and meaningful enough to contradict the old pattern. If you avoid important work, the proof may be 20 focused minutes before entertainment. If you break private promises, it may be standing up when the first alarm ends. If you become invisible around authority, prepare one useful sentence before a meeting and say it. If you explain every boundary, give one respectful answer without building a courtroom around it. Do not confuse a minimum with a maximum. The daily act is the floor that protects identity when motivation is low. You may do more, but the proof must remain possible when the day is inconvenient and nobody is impressed. That is when identity becomes believable. The old pattern was built through small permissions. One more delay, one more exception, one more promise moved to tomorrow. One more moment when another person's comfort outranked your judgment. The stronger pattern will also be built through small permissions. Give yourself permission to begin, before you feel ready. Disappoint someone without becoming disrespectful. Move slowly without stopping, and let action become visible before explanation. But pausing an old behavior is not enough. You must change the environment that keeps voting for it. Willpower matters, but an environment can force willpower to fight the same battle 50 times a day. If your phone sleeps beside your hand, distraction begins with an advantage. If a task is undefined, avoidance can always argue that now is not the right time. If every evening is unplanned, your most practiced impulse will write the schedule. Change the field before demanding heroism from yourself. Move the phone. Prepare the document. Define the first action clearly. Decide when messages will be answered. Put what you need where the new behavior begins. You are not making life effortless. You are refusing to make the old pattern convenient, and the stronger one unnecessarily difficult. Which would change you more right now? A clearer rule, a better environment, or one boundary that protects your attention? Your answer reveals whether the real obstacle is uncertainty, friction, or access. There is another resistance most people do not expect. Other people may continue speaking to the person you used to be. They remember the one who always agreed, arrived late, or announced plans and abandoned them. Their memory may be incomplete, but you cannot demand an update before your behavior supplies new evidence. This is where ego can ruin reconstruction. You change for 4 days and resent that nobody recognizes it. Someone doubts you, and proving them wrong becomes the center of the process. Do not build the stronger version as an argument against the people who underestimated you. That keeps them in command. Build it because your judgment has changed. Let reputation lag. Let people be uncertain while your conduct quietly makes the old description inaccurate. You do not repair your name by insisting on a new label. You repair it by producing a pattern the old label can no longer explain. This takes time. And time is where false reinvention becomes visible. A false version needs intensity. A real version needs continuity. The false version changes everything at once and treats exhaustion as proof of seriousness. The real version chooses fewer changes and remains after excitement leaves. The false version hates the past and demands perfection. The real version studies the past and expects repair. You will miss a day, hesitate in an old way, or hear the old explanation forming in your mouth. The decisive question is not whether the old pattern ever returns. It is whether it is allowed to regain permanent authority. One mistake is an event. The story you tell after it determines whether it becomes identity again. Do not say, "I knew I had not changed." Say, "The old method appeared under pressure. What condition invited it?" Then repair quickly. Not dramatically. Quickly. Return at the next decision. Shame loves delay. Once you miss the morning, it says the entire day is ruined. Once you avoid the task, it says you should begin next week. Once you break the boundary, it says the boundary was unrealistic. The old pattern survives by turning one error into permission for a complete retreat. Refuse the retreat. A stronger identity is not one that never breaks formation. It is one that knows how to restore formation without a speech. There is an ethical boundary to all of this. Building a new version does not mean inventing a cold persona, erasing your history, abandoning people as punishment, or treating vulnerability as weakness. Some parts of you do not need conquest. They need care. Fatigue is not always indiscipline. Grief is not a character defect. Uncertainty is not cowardice. Rest is not failure. And changing a goal is not betrayal when that goal no longer serves a healthy or honest purpose. Self-command requires accurate judgment, not permanent pressure. Sometimes the stronger response is work, asking for help, apologizing, or choosing deliberate rest instead of accidental escape. Sometimes it is leaving a harmful situation. Sometimes it is staying and learning the skill you have avoided. Reconstruction is not becoming less human. It is becoming less divided against your own judgment. Now use the next 30 days as a private reconstruction period. Do not announce a transformation or ask other people to certify it. Use the period to produce evidence. First, write one sentence describing the pattern you are retiring. Keep it behavioral, not insulting. The pattern I am retiring waits for pressure before beginning. The pattern I am retiring says yes before checking the cost. The pattern I am retiring hides behind preparation because action might expose imperfection. Second, identify its immediate reward. Avoidance pays temporary relief. Over-explaining pays the hope of approval. Distraction pays escape from uncertainty. Perfectionism protects unfinished work from evaluation. Find the payment. You cannot replace a strategy until you understand why your mind keeps purchasing it. Third, choose one governing principle. Write it as a decision rule. I begin before I negotiate with discomfort. I give myself time before giving an answer. I repair the promise at the next opportunity. Fourth, choose one daily proof. Keep a simple record so your mood cannot rewrite the week. Fifth, redesign one point in the environment where the old pattern usually begins. Remove access, reduce friction, or protect a specific time. Sixth, choose a repair rule before failure. If I miss the morning action, I complete the minimum before the day ends. If I give an automatic yes, I return and correct the answer. If I avoid the task, I work on it for 10 minutes before rewarding the avoidance. A repair rule prevents you from improvising while ashamed. Seventh, review the system every 7 days. What became easier? What repeatedly broke? What summoned the old pattern? What needs adjustment? Do not grade your worth. Study the system. At the end of 30 days, you may not feel like a completely different person. That is not the goal. The goal is that your own mind has received new information about who is in command. You said you would begin, and you began. You felt fear and still spoke. You wanted immediate relief and protected the larger outcome. You made an error and returned without turning it into collapse. You did not become perfect. You became more believable to yourself. Self-trust is not confidence repeated in your head. It is memory. It is the memory of watching yourself follow judgment when another choice was easier. That memory changes your posture before any external success arrives. You stop announcing intentions for emotional credit. You stop asking whether you are the kind of person who can change. You become occupied with the next proof. And slowly, the old identity loses its strongest weapon, familiarity. It no longer feels inevitable. Only one pattern that can appear, but does not have to rule. This is the deeper modern lesson in Machiavelli's warning about fixed conduct. The version of you that survived yesterday may not be qualified to build tomorrow. You do not have to despise that version. You simply have to stop giving it permanent office. Return to 6:18 in the morning. The alarm rings. The old movement begins. Your hand reaches toward the screen before thought arrives. But the phone is no longer beside you. You placed it across the room the night before. You stand to silence it. For a few seconds, nothing feels transformed. You are tired, the room is dark, and nobody is watching. There is no surge of confidence or certainty that your life has changed. There is only the next decision. You remember the principle. I keep the first promise of the day, so you do not return to bed. Later, when someone asks how your plans are going, you do not make a grand claim. You do not defend the past or demand belief. You say, I am working on it. And this time the sentence is supported by evidence. That is what truly changed. Not your personality overnight, the world's opinion, or the existence of fear and doubt. The chain of command changed. The old pattern may still speak, but it no longer receives automatic obedience. What is one piece of evidence you will create in the next 24 hours? A promise kept, a boundary protected, or a task finally begun? Choose one and make it specific. If this helped you see identity as something governed through conduct rather than wished into existence, subscribe to the Machiavelli framework for modern lessons on self-command, discipline, human nature, boundaries, and strategic judgment. You do not become a new person by declaring war on the old one. You become a new person when the old method stops making your decisions.